He wanted to invest in a land deal with a man she did not trust. She told him it felt risky. She said the numbers did not make sense. He listened, nodded, and then in front of his friends later that week, he joked that she was cute when she tried to understand business. Everyone laughed. She told me she never corrected him again after that. She said it like it was wisdom, like it was survival advice passed from mother to daughter. Pick your battles, Danielle. Peace in the house is more important than being right. I absorbed that lesson the way kids absorb everything. Quietly, deeply, permanently. The morning of the engagement party, I woke up with a tight feeling in my chest. Not fear exactly. More like pressure. Like the air before a storm. Nathan made pancakes. He moved around the kitchen slowly, like he was giving me space to breathe. Every few minutes he would look at me and smile, soft and steady. I kept checking my phone even though there were no new messages. My father had sent a text at 7:12 a.m. sharp. Be there at 4. Photographer arrives at 4:30. I have a short presentation planned. A presentation for an engagement party. At 3:45 we pulled into the circular driveway of the Whitfield. Valet attendants in black vests opened our doors. The building looked like a wedding venue from a magazine. Tall white columns, glass doors, polished stone floors that reflected the lights above like water. Inside, round tables were covered in white linen, gold centerpieces, a banner with our names printed in large script, Danielle and Nathan. Beneath it, in smaller letters, hosted by Richard and Linda Upton. Hosted, not celebrated. Not honored. Hosted. I felt like a guest at my own life. Guests started arriving at 4:15. My father moved through the room like a politician working a crowd. Handshakes, loud laughter, claps on backs. Every few minutes he would pull someone toward us. This is my daughter, the accountant. Very serious, very intense. He would say it like it was a joke, but it never felt like one. Nathan stayed beside me, his hand warm at the small of my back. At 5:10, my father tapped his glass with a fork. The high ringing sound cut through the room. Conversation slowed, then stopped. 60 faces turned toward him. He loved this part. The attention, the stage. He raised his champagne flute and smiled wide. Thank you all for coming. It means a lot to Linda and me to host this special evening. He talked about family, about tradition, about how fast children grow up. It almost sounded kind. Almost. Then he shifted. Danielle has always been determined, he said, pausing just long enough. As a child, she would argue with her teachers about grades. As a teenager, she insisted on doing everything the hard way, and now she's a forensic accountant, which means if any of you are hiding money, don't invite her over. Laughter rolled across the room. I felt my cheeks burn. Nathan's hand tightened slightly. And Nathan, my father continued, turning toward him. A brave man. It takes courage to marry into this family. More laughter. He took a sip. Then he said the line. To my daughter, who finally found a man desperate enough. The silence that followed was not polite. It was heavy, thick. I heard someone inhale sharply. I saw my mother's eyes close for a brief second. Nathan's body shifted beside me, ready to stand. I placed my hand on his arm and pressed down gently. Stay. I stood up slowly. I could feel my heart pounding, but my face was calm. Years of practice. I walked toward the front of the room where the projector screen was set up. My father frowned slightly, confused but still smiling. Danielle has something to add? He said lightly. Yes, I said. My voice sounded steady. I do. I opened my laptop on the small podium beside the screen. The HDMI cable was all ready, connected for his presentation. I clicked once. A document appeared on the screen. A clean spreadsheet. Numbers, dates, transfers, highlighted cells. I turned to face the room. 3 months ago, I began. I was reviewing a set of financial records for a client. While I was cross-checking industry vendors, I noticed something familiar, a subcontractor name I had seen before. It belonged to Upton and Marsh Construction. Across the room, my father's business partner, Harold Marsh, went still. His face lost color. I wasn't looking for anything, I continued. But as a forensic accountant, when something looks unusual, I follow it. I clicked again. The next page showed a pattern. Repeated payments, slightly inflated amounts. A shell company registered under a different name. The registered address linked back to a property my father owned. A champagne glass slipped from someone's hand. It hit the marble floor and shattered. The sound echoed. That shell company, I said carefully, has been receiving funds from Upton and Marsh for 7 years. The total amount transferred is just over $2.8 million. The room was silent in a way I had never experienced before. No whispers, no coughs, just the hum of the air system. My father set his glass down very slowly. "Danielle," he said, still smiling, but his eyes were hard now. "This isn't funny." "I agree," I said. Harold Marsh stood up halfway, then sat back down. "Richard?" he asked quietly. I kept my eyes on my father. "I found the payments by accident. I spent the last 3 months confirming them, cross-referencing invoices, tracking property records. I brought copies." I held up a folder. "You always told me to understand the numbers," I said. "To never be naive." So I did. My mother whispered my name like a warning. I did not look at her. My father's voice dropped low. "We will discuss this at home." "No," I said. "We won't." I turned back to the screen. "You built your reputation on strength and honesty. That's what you tell everyone in this room. But the numbers tell a different story." Harold stood fully now. "Is this true?" he asked. My father did not answer right away. For the first time in my life, he looked small. Not physically, but structurally, like something inside him had cracked. "I think," I said gently, "that tonight was supposed to be about humiliating me. But I'm done being your punchline." My voice shook slightly then, but I kept going. "You taught me that the person with the facts controls the story, so here are the facts." I closed the laptop. "I will not be spoken about like I am, a burden. I will not marry a man you try to belittle. And I will not protect secrets that hurt other people." The silence broke into murmurs. Phones came out. Harold stepped away, already dialing someone. My father looked at me like he had never seen me before. Nathan stood and walked to my side. He did not speak. He just stood there, steady. "I love you," I said to my father, because that part was still true. "But I am not afraid of you anymore." For a long moment, no one moved. Then the room shifted. Conversations started in low voices. The spell was broken. My mother approached me slowly. Her eyes were wet. "You didn't have to do this here," she whispered. "Yes," I said softly. "I did. Because if I had waited, it would have happened behind closed doors, in private, quiet, contained, like every other wound. Instead, the truth stood in the center of the room under bright lights. Clear, documented, real. We left before dessert was served. Outside, the evening air felt cool against my skin. I took a deep breath. For the first time in my life, my lungs felt full. Nathan looked at me. "Are you okay?" I thought about the little girl with the report card, the college graduate at the steakhouse, the woman in the parking lot gripping her steering wheel after another cutting comment. I thought about my mother in the kitchen telling me peace was more important than being right. "I think," I said slowly, "I just changed the current." Nathan smiled. Not proud, not triumphant, just certain. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Messages, calls, questions. I silenced it. There would be consequences. Legal ones, family ones, social ones. I knew that. But there would also be something else. Freedom. My father always believed fear was the strongest force in a room. He was wrong. The strongest force is truth, and once it is spoken out loud, it does not shrink back down to fit someone else's comfort. That night, as we drove home, I watched the city lights blur past the window. My engagement party had not gone the way anyone expected. It had not been simple. It had not been peaceful. But it had been honest. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. She would not say what happened. He answered by canceling her credit card. Not for a short time, but forever. She had to ask him for grocery money for the next 8 months until he decided she had finally learned her lesson. She told me this while drying a plate, smiling like it was just a small, funny story about the weather. She never argued again. Not once. Not in 30 years. That night, lying next to Nathan, I finally understood what that story really meant. It was not just a memory. It was a warning. My mother was showing me the price of staying quiet and the cost of speaking up. I stared at the ceiling and thought, if I do not draw the line now, I will become her. Smiling through hurt, drying plates, telling my own daughter the same story one day like it was something small that just happened. I could not sleep after that. The next evening, Friday, the night before the party, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off the seating chart. My father was in his study, the door open, his reading glasses low on his nose, writing something on a yellow legal pad. I asked, "Dad, what are you writing?" He did not look up. "My toast. Do not worry about it." I stepped closer. I read it. Now he looked up and smiled. It was the kind of smile that never moved past his lips. "You will hear it tomorrow with everyone else." Something heavy and cold moved through my chest. "Dad, it is my engagement party. I think I have a right to..." "Danielle." His voice dropped lower, the warning tone, the one that clearly meant stop talking. "Trust me, sweetheart. Everyone will remember this toast." My mother appeared in the doorway holding a cup of tea. She read the room in half a second. She was always very good at that. She gently moved the conversation in another direction. "Your father always gives beautiful speeches, honey. Remember Uncle Joe's retirement?" I remembered that dinner, 4 years ago. My father stood up in front of 40 people and joked that Joe was retiring because nobody needed him anymore. Not even his wife. Joe laughed. Everyone else laughed too. Joe's wife did not laugh. That was my father's talent. He could cut you open in public and make it sound like love. I left the study without saying another word. I took my laptop bag from the car. I had a client audit deadline Monday morning and needed to finish the files over the weekend. The bag went into the trunk again. "Bring the laptop to the party," Nathan had said earlier. "You can work while they set up. Send the file before dinner." It was a simple and practical idea, nothing deeper than that. That laptop would turn out to be the most important thing I brought to the party, but neither of us knew it yet. Saturday morning came, the day of the party. I was drinking coffee and checking the seating chart when the event coordinator emailed the final guest list. Richard had made some last-minute additions. I opened the file. 62 names. I began counting. His golf foursome. The Hendersons, from the country club. 2 couples from his Rotary group. The Warrens, his insurance broker and his wife. A contractor he had known for only 6 months. 6 months. And that man was invited to my engagement party. Then I saw the names Gerald and Patricia Marsh. Table 1. Front and center. Right beside family. I searched for my college friends and my co-workers. I found them at table 8, close to the kitchen. I called my father right away. "Dad, where are my people?" "Emily, Jess, the team from work." "They are at the back table," he answered calmly. There was not enough space at the front, Danielle. I had to prioritize. Prioritize who? Your golf friends? His voice became sharp. This is a networking opportunity, not a sleepover. Do not be selfish. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not because I was angry, but because of that old and familiar feeling of being moved around by someone who believed he owned every room he walked into. Nathan was standing across the kitchen. He had not said anything during the call, but his jaw was tight. He invited Gerald to sit at table 1, I said. Front row, right next to us. Nathan leaned back against the counter. You know why, right? I looked at him. He is performing, Nathan said quietly. For Gerald, for all of them. The proud father, the perfect family. He is putting us on display like a showroom for his business partners. I stared at the list on my screen. 62 names, and I was just a decoration at my own celebration. I closed the laptop, got dressed, and drove to the venue to watch my father's show. I arrived at the Whitfield an hour early to help set up. It was exactly the type of place my father loved. Exposed brick walls, shiny brass lights, a long, dark mahogany bar. At the far end, a projector screen already prepared for the slideshow my father had arranged with family photos. Photos he had chosen, moments he had approved. I was fixing a centerpiece at table 3 when I heard his voice. It came from the hallway near the coat check. My father and Gerald Marsh were standing close together, drinks already in their hands. I was around the corner. They could not see me. I tell you, Gerald, I am so proud of my little girl. My father's voice was warm and open, the public voice. She is everything I raised her to be. Gerald laughed. You have done an amazing job, Rich. Not every father stays this involved. Family first. That has always been my rule. I stood there behind the wall, still holding the flowers. The word echoed in my mind. Proud. My father had just said he was proud of me. He had never said that word directly to my face. Not at graduation. Not when I passed my CPA exam. Not when I earned my certification. Not once in 29 years. But here, in a hallway, speaking to the man whose money he was quietly taking, he said it easily. That was where the word belonged for him. It was like money, spent where it would bring him something back. I placed the centerpiece down and walked, away slowly. I did not confront him. I did not cry. I simply stored the moment where I stored all the others. In that place inside me where pain sits for so long it begins to feel normal, like part of the furniture. What I did not know yet was this. Gerald Marsh, the man standing there praising my father as a devoted dad, had been quietly losing hundreds of thousands of dollars to the same man he was about to toast, and I had proof of it sitting on my laptop in the trunk of my car. Let me go back. 3 months before the party, I was working late at my firm, deep in a forensic audit for a commercial client. It was a mid-sized real estate developer that had been flagged for strange payments. The work was slow and detailed. Spreadsheets, wire transfers, shell companies stacked inside each other like Russian dolls. I was tracing a series of payments. Through a limited liability company registered in Delaware, as they often are, when something caught my attention. The LLC had no website, no employees listed, no public filings beyond the basic requirement. Yet the wire transfers moving through, it were large, steady, and monthly. I kept pulling at the thread. The LLC was connected to a holding company. That holding company shared a registered agent with another business. And that business, hidden 3 layers deep under enough paperwork to make anyone dizzy, led back to a name I knew very well. Upton and Marsh Construction LLC. My father's company. I stared at the screen. My coffee became cold beside me. The office was empty. Everyone else had gone home hours earlier. The cleaning staff was vacuuming down the hall. My training took over before my emotions could. Certified fraud examiners have a responsibility. If we find signs of financial fraud during our work, we cannot ignore it. It is not a choice. It is the job. But this was my father. I saved the files. I closed the laptop. I drove home. I sat in my car in the driveway for 10 minutes with the engine off and my hands on the steering wheel. Then I went inside. I opened a new folder on my personal laptop and named it Project Atlas. Over the next several weeks, I worked on it at night after work. Alone. I traced every transaction. I recorded every difference. I built a full report the same way I would for any client. Except this time, the subject was the man who raised me. I did not tell anyone at first. 2 weeks later, I told Nathan. Not because I wanted to, but because I could not carry it by myself anymore. I was waking up at 3 a.m, staring at the ceiling, running numbers in my head, checking and rechecking every entry. The auditor in me understood what the data was showing. The daughter in me kept searching for another answer. There was none. I sat Nathan down at the kitchen table on a Tuesday night and showed him the summary. He read it slowly, the careful way lawyers read everything. Once for the facts, once for the consequences. When he finished, he looked up at me. How much? It is hard to know without full access, I said. But from what I can trace, it is significant. Over 10 years. He placed the papers down gently. What do you want to do with this? I do not know. He is my father. Nathan nodded. He did not pressure me, he did not lecture. He did not say what most people would have said, which is that my father was a thief. Instead, he leaned forward and said the one thing that mattered most. He is also stealing from a man who trusts him. Gerald has been his partner for 15 years. I looked down at the wooden table, at the pattern in the grain, at the small ring left by my coffee mug. Whatever you decide, Nathan said softly, I am with you. But do not wait too long. Gerald deserves the truth. I nodded, slowly. I agreed with him. My plan was clear in my mind, even if I was afraid to say it out loud. Finish the audit, put together the full report, survive the engagement party. Then on Monday morning, I would hand the report directly to Gerald, in person if I could. Clean and professional, no drama, no scene. Just the facts. Given the way, I give them to any client. Bring the laptop to the party, Nathan said a few days later. You already have that Monday deadline anyway. It was a practical idea, reasonable, the kind of suggestion that made total sense at the time. My father, of course, had his own plans for that night, and those plans changed mine completely. Saturday evening, 6:30. The Whitfield looked like a photo from a luxury magazine. Candles glowing on every table. White orchid centerpieces arranged. Perfectly. A string quartet in the corner playing something soft and classical that I couldn't identify. My father had truly gone all out. That was the thing about Richard Upton. When he put on a show, he did it perfectly. Nathan and I walked in together. I was wearing a cream silk dress I had bought just for this evening. Nathan wore a navy suit, his hand resting steady at the small of my back as we stepped through the tall double doors. My father greeted us in the foyer. He was already working the crowd, champagne in one hand, handshake ready in the other. There she is, he said, opening his arms wide. There's my beautiful girl. He hugged me and held it for a full 3 seconds. His cologne smelled sharp and expensive. My body stiffened automatically. My father had never called me beautiful. Not at prom, not at graduation, not once in 29 years of living under his roof. But here, in front of the arriving guests, in front of Gerald and Patricia Marsh who were handing their coats to the attendant, I was suddenly his beautiful girl. I hugged him back because what else are you supposed to do? Gerald shook my hand warmly. Congratulations, Danielle. Your father hasn't stopped talking about this party for weeks. Thank you, Mr. Marsh. I'm happy you're here. And I meant it, though not for the reason he assumed. Nathan squeezed my hand under the table once we were seated. I leaned toward him and whispered, He's performing. Nathan whispered back, I know. Just breathe. I looked around the room, 60 faces, candlelight flickering, wine being poured. My father moving from table to table like a politician during a campaign rally, shaking hands, patting shoulders, laughing that big confident laugh. This was his night, not mine. Not yet. Dinner was served at 7:15. My father had arranged the seating chart himself, so he sat at the head of our table, table 1, with Gerald and Patricia to his right, my mother to his left, and Nathan and me across from them, like some kind of panel. The food was excellent. The wine was costly. And my father was in rare form. Somewhere between the salad course and the main dish, he began telling stories. Not about Nathan and me. About me. The greatest hits of Danielle's mistakes, wrapped up as humor. Did I ever tell you about the time Danielle failed her driving test? 3 times. He held up 3 fingers. Laughter moved down the table. And the cooking. Oh God, the cooking. She almost burned the whole kitchen down making scrambled eggs. Scrambled eggs. More laughter. Then he leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was sharing something personal. And her first boyfriend, what was his name? Danielle, Kevin, Kyle. He lasted about 4 months before he ran for the hills. The table laughed. My mother laughed. Even people who didn't know me laughed, because my father had that skill, the skill of making cruelty sound like affection. I smiled. The autopilot smile. The one I had been practicing since I was 9 years old. Nathan did not smile. His hand found mine under the table and held it tightly. Across from me, Patricia Marsh tilted her head slightly. She leaned closer to my mother and said softly, but not softly enough, "Richard's being a little hard on her tonight, isn't he?" My mother answered immediately, almost automatically, like a trained response. "Oh, that's just how he shows love." Patricia looked at me. Our eyes met for a brief second. She didn't speak again, but I could see it. The understanding. The quiet concern of a woman who knew exactly what she was watching. She told me later. I knew right then. I just didn't realize how much worse it was about to become. 15. Dessert plates removed. The string quartet paused. My father stood up. He buttoned his jacket, picked up a spoon, and tapped it against his champagne glass 3 times. The room became quiet in that practiced way. The way people quiet down for a man they have learned to pay attention to. I want to raise a glass to my daughter Danielle. I straightened in my chair. My heart did something foolish. It hoped. Even after everything, after 29 years of proof, some small broken part of me still leaned toward the light. Maybe this time. For 29 years, he said, scanning the room with that performer's gaze, I've watched this girl struggle. The word hit like a stone dropped into water. With school, with work, with every relationship that didn't quite work out. My face felt hot. I could feel 60 pairs of eyes turning toward me. I'll be honest. There were times I wasn't sure anyone would stay around long enough to figure her out. A few uneasy laughs. Glasses frozen halfway to lips. Then he lifted his champagne flute, smiled his widest smile, and delivered the line he had probably rehearsed all week. So tonight, I want to toast to Danielle, who finally found a man desperate enough. He laughed. A big, open Richard Upton laugh. No one joined him. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I have ever heard. 60 people completely still, forks lowered, eyes wide. A woman at table 4 covered her mouth. Gerald Marsh stared down at his plate. Patricia's hand moved to her husband's arm. Nathan's entire body tightened beside me. I felt his weight shift. His chair began to slide back. I placed my hand on his arm, firm and steady. "Don't," I whispered. "I've got this." The silence stretched. A few people at the far tables lifted their glasses out of pure discomfort, habit taking over. Most did not. Mark, Nathan's best man, set his glass down carefully on the table like he was making a quiet statement. He shook his head once. Slow. Helen Cole, Nathan's mother, turned and looked directly at my mother. The expression on her face was not anger. It was shock. Pure disbelief. My mother looked away. My father stood there, glass still raised, reading the room. He was smart enough to feel the temperature drop, but Richard Upton had never backed down from a room in his life. So he pushed further. "Oh, come on," he said, grinning wider. "It's a joke. Danielle knows I love her." He turned to me, eyes bright with fake warmth. "Right, sweetheart?" 60 people looked at me. I looked at my father. 5 seconds passed. 5 seconds is a very long time when no one is breathing. Then I said it, quiet, clear. 2 words. "Sit down, Dad." His grin cracked slightly. "Danielle, don't be dramatic." I said, "Sit down." My voice did not rise. It didn't have to. The room was so silent that even a whisper would have reached the back wall. My father stared at me. For one terrible electric second, I thought he might argue. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked around, searching for support, a laugh, anyone. He found nothing, just 60 faces watching him like witnesses. He sat down. It was the first time in my entire life that my father did what I told him to do. I pushed my chair back and stood up. I smoothed the front of my dress and walked calmly, steadily, without rushing, toward the front of the room. I had a laptop in my bag and a file that had been waiting for this exact moment, without either of us realizing it. The distance from table 1 to the front of the room was maybe 30 feet. It felt like a mile. I could feel every pair of eyes following me. The soft rustle of napkins, someone clearing their throat, a chair creaking as someone leaned to see better. My laptop bag was under the AV table near the projection screen. I had placed it there earlier during setup, planning to send my Monday report during cocktail hour. I didn't need it then. I needed it now. I unzipped the bag and opened the laptop. My hands were steady. My heart was not. My father's voice came from behind me, sharp and tight. "Danielle, what are you doing?" I didn't turn around. I connected the HDMI cable into the projector port, the same projector my father had arranged for his carefully chosen family slideshow. Photos of vacations he had selected, holidays he had staged, a highlight reel of a family that never truly existed. The screen lit up. I opened the folder. Project Atlas. Then I turned to face the room. 60 people. My mother clutching her napkin. Nathan now standing 3 steps behind me. Gerald Marsh at table 1. His reading glasses still resting on his nose from reading the dessert menu. My father. "Just told 60 people that no man would willingly marry me," I said. My voice was calm and professional, the same tone I use when presenting findings to a client. I think it's only fair that those same 60 people understand who my father truly is. I clicked the file open. The first page appeared on the screen. A white background, black letters, and a title at the top that said, "Forensic Audit Summary, Unauthorized Fund Transfers, Upton and Marsh Construction, LLC." Gerald Marsh's champagne glass started to tip in his hand. I didn't prepare a speech. I didn't have to. "This is a forensic audit report I put together over the last 3 months, I said. "It shows a pattern of unauthorized fund transfers from the company my father co-owns with Mr. Gerald Marsh." I scrolled to the summary page. 3 columns, dates, amounts, destination accounts. 10 full years of transactions displayed in the clean, clinical style I had been trained to create. The numbers spoke clearly on their own. My father jumped to his feet. His chair scraped loudly across the marble floor, the harsh sound making 2 people visibly flinch. "This is absurd." His voice was loud now. Loud in a way it never was in public. The controlled indoor tone cracking open to reveal what lived underneath. "You don't know what you're talking about." I turned and looked straight at him. For the first time in 29 years, I looked at my father without lowering my eyes. Dad, I'm a certified fraud examiner. This is literally my profession. The room did not gasp. It was worse than that. It simply absorbed everything. 60 people, thinking at once. I could almost see it moving across the tables like a storm front. Eyes widening, hands slowly reaching for phones, couples leaning close to whisper in each other's ears. Then came the sound. Glass hitting marble. Sharp. Final. Gerald Marsh's champagne flute slipped from his fingers and shattered against the floor. The crack of breaking glass cut through the silence like a gunshot. Patricia grabbed her husband's arm. Gerald. Gerald did not look at her. He was staring at the screen. His face had turned gray. The kind of gray that appears when someone watches 15 years of trust disappear in 15 seconds. Then he turned toward my father. The expression on Gerald Marsh's face is something I will never forget. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was the look of a man realizing his house has been burning for years, and no one bothered to tell him. My father moved quickly. He always moved fast when pressure closed in around him. He stepped toward Gerald with both palms raised, the classic peacemaker pose. Gerald, listen to me. She's lying. She's upset. I made a joke she didn't like, and now she's inventing stories to embarrass me. Gerald lifted one hand. He did not stand. He did not shout. Just one hand, palm facing out, like someone stopping traffic. Don't. One word. But his voice trembled slightly, and that small shake carried more weight than anything my father had said all evening. Gerald reached into his jacket pocket and took out his phone. He dialed a number right there at table 1, in front of everyone in the room. His voice was low, but the nearby tables could still hear him. Ray, it's Gerald. I need you at the office Monday morning. First thing, it's about the partnership. He ended the call and set the phone down on the table. He did not look at my father again. Richard turned toward my mother. His calm mask was breaking now, cracking in real time like thin ice under heavy weight. Linda, tell them she's lost her mind. Tell them. My mother sat completely still. Her hands rested folded on the table. Her eyes remained fixed on her plate. She said nothing. The same silence she had given me for 29 years. She finally gave it to him. And for the first time, her silence was not protection. It was permission. Chairs began scraping across the floor. Guests at the far tables quietly stood and reached for their coats and handbags. There were no dramatic exits, no loud protests, just the slow, unmistakable retreat of people who no longer wanted to be in that room. Nathan stepped up beside me. He didn't speak. He simply placed his hand gently between my shoulder blades. Steady, solid. Then a voice came from table 2. Helen Cole, Nathan's mother, stood up. She walked over to me, took both my hands in hers, and said softly, "I'm proud of you, sweetheart." 4 words. The exact 4 words I had waited my entire life to hear from my father. They came from someone else's mother, and somehow that made them even more meaningful. Gerald stood slowly. He placed one hand on the table to steady himself, not because he was weak, but because he was holding himself together. He walked toward my father. The 2 men stood face to face in front of what was left of the crowd. Maybe 50 people now. Some had already slipped out. Witnesses to 15 years of deception. Gerald's voice was quiet and controlled. The voice of a man choosing his words carefully because he understood that every person in that room would remember them. 15 years I trusted you. My father began speaking quickly. Gerald, let me explain. There's context here. The transfers it was a restructuring. My accountant advised, your accountant. Gerald almost laughed. Almost. Your daughter is a forensic accountant, Richard, and she just showed me what your accountant was hiding. My father opened his mouth again. No sound came out. Gerald adjusted his jacket and straightened his tie. Then he said quietly and clearly, "My lawyer will contact you Monday morning. Don't call me. Don't come to the office. Don't try to reach me." He turned to Patricia. She was already standing, coat over her arm, prepared. They had been married for 35 years. She knew when it was time to leave. But Patricia paused. She walked over to me, took my hand, and squeezed it. "Thank you for telling the truth, Danielle. I know what it cost you." I nodded. My throat was too tight to form words. The Marshes walked out through the double doors. The room watched them leave. No one attempted to stop them. No one said goodbye to Richard. My father stood alone in the center of the room. The projector was still shining behind him, casting the audit summary across his back like a shadow he could not escape. One by one, tables emptied. Coats were gathered. Car engines started in the parking lot outside. Not a single person paused to shake his hand on the way out. By 9 o'clock, the room was almost empty. The string quartet had packed up 20 minutes earlier. The waitstaff moved quietly between tables, clearing plates from a dinner no one had finished. My mother remained seated at table 1. Same chair, same posture. She had not moved for 45 minutes. My father stood near the bar, jacket removed, tie loosened. He held a glass of whiskey he had not touched. I closed my laptop, unplugged the HDMI cable, and slid the computer into my bag. My hands began shaking only then. Not during the presentation. After. The adrenaline was fading, and what remained felt heavier. I walked toward the center of the room. My father looked at me. His eyes were red. I could not tell if it was anger or something deeper. Maybe it was both. "You just destroyed your own father," he said. I met his eyes. "No, Dad. You destroyed yourself. I just stopped covering for you." "Over a joke? You did all this over a joke?" "This isn't about the toast, and you know it." He turned toward my mother, making one last attempt. "Linda, you're going to let her do this to me?" My mother finally lifted her gaze from the table. For the first time in 30 years of marriage, after a lifetime of careful silence, she spoke. "You did this, Richard, not her." 7 words, quiet, almost gentle. But they landed like a door closing firmly. My father's face changed in a way I had never seen before. It did not break into tears. My father did not cry. Instead, it collapsed into a kind of emptiness. The expression of a man who had run out of people to blame. I picked up my bag. Nathan stood by the door holding my coat. "Goodbye, Dad," I said. He did not answer. I walked out of the Whitfield with my hand in Nathan's. The November air was cold and clean. I inhaled deeply, fully, like I had been underwater for 29 years and had finally reached the surface. My hands were still trembling. This was not victory. It was grief wearing a different coat, but it was finished. Monday arrived quickly. Gerald's attorney, Raymond Stein, was at the Upton and Marsh office by 8 in the morning with a court order demanding a full forensic audit of the company's financial records, carried out by an independent third-party firm, not by me. My report had started the process, but the investigation needed to be impartial and transparent. I understood that. I wanted it that way. By Tuesday, word had spread the way it always does in small towns, through phone calls that begin with, "Did you hear?" and end with, "I always felt something wasn't right." Richard Upton was removed from the membership list of the Ridgewood Country Club, not suspended, removed entirely. 22 years of membership fees, charity galas, and golf tournaments, erased with one board decision. The man who once bought drinks for the whole bar could no longer get past the front desk. By Wednesday, 3 of the business contacts who had sat at his carefully planned tables on Saturday evening had quietly ended their associations. There were no public announcements, just unanswered calls, canceled meetings, and the slow, careful erasing that happens when people decide you are no longer worth the risk. The story never appeared in the newspaper. It did not need to. In a community that size, the party itself was the headline. 60 witnesses meant 60 versions of the same story spreading outward like ripples in water. My father called me 11 times that week. I did not answer, not once. The 12th call went to voicemail. I listened to it only a single time. Danielle, you need to fix this. Call me back right now. Still giving commands, even now. I erased the voicemail and placed my phone face down on the kitchen counter. Nathan was cooking dinner. He glanced at me but didn't ask who it was. He didn't have to. The man who used to control every room he stepped into couldn't even get his own daughter to answer his call. And for the first time in my life, that silence belonged to me. It was mine to give, not his to take. The independent audit lasted 6 long weeks. When the final report arrived, it confirmed everything I had documented, and even more. $837,000. That was the amount funneled through shell LLCs over 10 years. Monthly transfers small enough to avoid automatic alerts, but big enough to support a lifestyle that was never Richard Upton's to pay for. The lake house, the boat, the country club membership he no longer officially had. In January, Gerald filed a civil lawsuit, breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, conversion of partnership assets. His attorney told Nathan quietly, lawyer to lawyer, that they were considering referring the case to the district attorney for possible criminal charges. My father hired a defense attorney, an expensive one. But good lawyers require serious money, and my father's liquid assets were frozen while the civil case moved forward. He burned through his savings in less than 2 months. By March, Upton and Marsh construction was suspended. Work stopped. Contracts were canceled. The 12 employees my father used to brag about were now filing for unemployment benefits. Then the lake house went on the market. I saw the listing online. The same house where my father hosted 4th of July cookouts, where he stood on the back deck with a beer in his hand, talking loudly about how he built everything from scratch. Turns out, a big part of that everything belonged to Gerald. Nathan showed me the listing one evening. I stared at it for 10 seconds, then closed the browser tab. You okay? He asked softly. I didn't do this to him, I said. He did this to himself. Nathan nodded slowly. I know, but it still doesn't feel good. It's not supposed to. He was right. Justice isn't meant to feel like a party. It feels more like the heavy sound of a door finally shutting, solid, final, necessary. But the hardest moment was still ahead of me, and it came 2 weeks later in a phone call I never expected. My mother called on a Sunday afternoon. I almost ignored it. Something made me answer. Maybe instinct, maybe hope, maybe just the fact that she had never called me on a Sunday before. Sundays were always my father's territory. Football and silence. Danielle. Her voice sounded different, smaller but clearer somehow, like she had finally set down something heavy she'd been carrying for years. Hi, Mom. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end. I should have said something 30 years ago, she said. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes and leaned against the counter. Those were the words I had waited my entire life to hear. And they came wrapped in 3 decades of regret. I saw what he did to you, she continued. Every time. And I told myself that was just his way of caring. That's what I told myself, Danielle. Because the other option, admitting I allowed my daughter to be hurt by her own father, that was too painful. Mom, please let me finish. Her voice broke. What you did at that party, standing up like that, I have never been that brave, not once. And watching you, it opened something in me. I didn't tell her it was okay, because it wasn't. Not yet, maybe not for a long time. I love you, Mom, I said carefully. But love isn't enough anymore. I need you to show me. She was quiet again. I started seeing a therapist, she said finally. Last week was my first appointment. I pressed my hand to my mouth, my eyes filled with tears. That's a good start, Mom. We talked for 20 more minutes, carefully, like walking across thin ice, aware that one wrong step could break it. But we kept moving forward. 2 days later, I got a text from my father. Just one message. The last one I would ever receive, from Richard Upton. You chose a stranger over your own blood. I read it twice. Then I understood. And that understanding gave me the final clarity I needed. Gerald Marsh had been his partner for 15 years. His friend. The man whose money he had stolen. And still, my father called him a stranger. Richard Upton never understood trust. He only understood control. And when control disappeared, he had nothing left. I deleted the message, and I didn't look back. 6 months after the party, Nathan and I hosted our own celebration. Not at the Whitfield, not in any rented venue. We held it in Nathan's parents' backyard, 15 people, string lights from the hardware store, burgers on the grill, a Bluetooth speaker playing a playlist we made together on a lazy Sunday morning. No projector, no slideshow, no assigned seating. My friends Emily and Jasmine, along with co-workers, sat in lawn chairs and drank beer from cans. Nathan's mom, Helen, brought her famous lemon bars. Mark gave a toast that was only 3 sentences long and made everyone laugh. Real laughter. The kind that comes from deep in your stomach, not the kind you force out of politeness. My mother came. She arrived, early, carrying a homemade dish. She hadn't cooked for a gathering in years because my father always insisted on catered food. She was quieter than usual, careful with what she said. But she was present. She was trying. My father was not invited. Halfway through the evening, the doorbell rang. A delivery driver stood there holding a huge arrangement of white peonies with a card attached. I opened it. Danielle, the most honest person I've ever known. Congratulations. Gerald and Patricia Marsh. I stood in the doorway holding that card for a long time. Nathan came up behind me. You okay? Yeah, I said softly. I spent 29 years trying to earn one word from my father. And Gerald gives me something my dad never could. Nathan wrapped his arm around me. Some people build, some people take. You can't change which one your father chose to be. I buried my face in his shoulder and cried. Real tears. Messy, shaking, ugly tears. Not because I was exactly sad, but because something that had been locked tight inside me for 29 years had finally opened. And everything inside needed somewhere to go, 15 people who truly wanted to be there. That's all I ever needed. People sometimes ask if I regret what happened. The answer is complicated. I regret it every single day, but not for the reason you think. I don't regret telling the truth. I don't regret standing up for myself. I regret that my father forced me into a position where I had to choose between loyalty and honesty. That decision should never have been mine. Let me be clear. I did not project that document to get revenge. I didn't walk onto that stage with a plan. My plan was Monday morning. Calm, professional, private. But when my father stood in front of everyone I loved and told them I was worthless, when he turned my engagement party into one last performance where he was the hero, and I was the joke, something changed inside me. It wasn't just anger, it was something deeper. The realization that if I sat down and swallowed that humiliation, I would swallow everything forever. And I was tired of swallowing. The truth is, I had been silent about 2 things for years. The way my father treated me, and what he had done to Gerald. And in that moment, I understood those silences came from the same place. Fear. Fear of losing a father who was never truly mine. Silence isn't loyalty. Silence is permission. I learned that at a dinner table while watching my mother fold her napkin and smile like everything was fine. If you're listening and this feels familiar, if you know what it's like to make yourself small so someone else can feel big, I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's your choice. But I will say this. Setting a boundary with family doesn't mean you don't love them. It means you respect yourself enough to say, I will not accept this anymore. Sometimes that is the bravest sentence a person can speak. Here's where I am now. Nathan and I are getting married next month. Small ceremony, 30 guests, every single person chosen by us. No one volunteered to take control of the planning. No one needed to. My mother is still in therapy. We talk once a week, sometimes twice. The conversations are careful, like learning to walk again after years of sitting down. She isn't the mother I needed when I was 9, but she's trying to be the mother I need now. And I am learning to let her. Gerald's civil case is still moving through the courts. I don't follow every update. I gave my deposition last month. Calm, professional, just facts and numbers. The numbers speak loudly enough. Richard sold the lake house. I heard from a cousin that he's renting a small apartment on the east side of town, alone. Linda moved in with her sister back in February. My father hasn't reached out since that last text. I don't expect him to. The man who controlled every conversation for 29 years finally faced one he couldn't manage. I'm not a hero. I want that to be clear. I'm not some fearless warrior who planned the perfect downfall. I'm just a woman who was pushed too far on the wrong night and happened to have proof in her hands. That's the truth. Some mornings I wake up and miss my father. Not the real one. The version I created in my head. The one who taught me to ride a bike and truly meant it. The one who said he was proud and wasn't performing for an audience. That father never existed. But the grief is still real, if you know. What it's like to mourn someone who is still alive, I see you. And you are allowed to grieve and move forward at the same time.
If you like a video, do not forget to hit the subscribe button for more videos.